Stinky Popcorn Boys.
We watch movies and eat popcorn. And are stinky.
Hello. We are the Stinky Popcorn Boys. Just some boys talking about movies and how they made us feel. I am Patrick Basquill, and I hate wet socks.
Ooh, that sucks. And I'm John Gilardi, and I'm watching movies again. So
Back, baby.
it was, there's been a little hiatus. Big part of that, just like we could have recorded episodes, but I just didn't have time to watch anything. So that's kind of why we're here. But we're here talking about All Quiet on the Western Front, Part 3 or 3.0.
Because we've been all quiet on the Stinky front. That's what
there
it
you
is.
go.
That's how it ties in.
That should have been the thing. But we got a few other movies lined up. So we're back. The crazy times.
We're back.
The busy times have passed. We watched All Quiet on the Western Front, the third iteration. The first one, I think, made by the Germans, I want to say.
Because they banned this book. So I have to say, wow. I have to say an apology to you, because I think you messaged me like, "Yo, this movie bangs," and I was like, "Yeah, man, Ernest Hemingway, he writes them good," and Ernest Hemingway didn't write this. But,
yeah, when you said that, I was like, "Wow, that's good." He really went and wrote a. That's just like, that's impressive. I guess that he wrote a German storyline, but cool.
Yeah,
I just took your word for it. It didn't seem right, but I just believed you.
It's not right. You know what? And that's why sometimes
that's the lesson.
That's the lesson. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you're very wrong about a thing, especially when you don't know what it is, I guess. Because I think I was thinking of For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Okay.
Anyway, Ernest Hemingway didn't write this.
Do you know the history of the writer and that stuff, since you know that it was banned?
A little bit. I know that it was a German soldier who sort of lived through this, from what I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then published this book, and then I think it got banned in Germany. They were like, "Hey, this isn't the vibe. Let's not. No. Let's not put this out there."
Yeah, and it was banned and burned in Nazi Germany. So I mean, that I don't know how much that means, because everything was banned and burned then, but still.
But it's a denial. I mean, it's just interesting because it's a denial of the because I'm sure that the Nazi sympathizers would sympathize with the regional general. What is that guy? The field. Who's that guy? He's not the field marshal. The field marshal is the highest.
Which guy?
The guy who is like, we're gonna take Latierne. Latier or whatever the name of the city was.
Just some general. He might be the field marshal.
Field marshal.
It's just titles. He's some kind of general guy.
He's just some kind of general guy who's telling him what to do. I love. Okay, anyway, moving on. Not moving on. We're staying spot. It's been a minute. I'm just excited because let me just say, I'm gonna jump in because I am excited about this movie, and because I'm I was like, oh man, another war movie. But this movie is beautiful, and it's like, this movie is good. I like this movie, and if it wasn't for 1917, and if it wasn't for it being in German, which is an unfortunate sort of exclusionary thing for the film market, for what it's worth, it's like, this movie is really good.
Yeah, that's what I don't think I asked you to watch it. I just told you I watched it, and I was blown away by it. So I'm glad that that didn't wasn't hollow, I guess, and actually impressed you. I guess the movie did, not me. Not me referencing it.
John, you impressed me.
John's a really good referral guy. There are people who treat that as a character trait, so I'm not far off saying that. But I don't treat that as a trait.
I
Anyways,
think you're a pretty good referral guy. I would say, don't make it a part of your thing, but I think that you're pretty good, because I know that if John has said something to me, then he's like, hey, you should check this out, then it's like probably a pretty good chance that John has vetted it pretty substantially, and also as a friend is like, hey, I know you, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna like this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I try. I mean, yeah, I try to make my recommendations mean something, which I think anyone should, you know. But
I like to give recommendations to things to people that will make
Just
you
to-
question whether or not that I know that I like them.
just gotta fuck
like-
with people.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie, quick history, and I'm not an expert, but this has been made at least 3 times. Primarily, like the first big one was in the 1930s. I've seen that. Don't remember too much of it, but it's still an impressive movie. And then there was one made in 1970s. Once again, a fine movie, good. And then they remade it again. So it's like roughly every 40 years. So we got the 30s, the 70s, so that's 40, and then 70, so about 50 years since the last one. So it's like, you know, when 2060-ish rolls around, get ready for a new version of this movie. But anyways, this is the latest one, and it's a German production shot in German language. I watched it with dubs because I was kind of working on the side, so it's hard to read subtitles while you're kind of doing admin work on the side. But it didn't mean I wasn't engaged the whole way through. Visually, it's amazing. For me, it hits on a lot of framing that I really like tons of like kind of centered over the shoulder, kind of like a video game third-person view, but it's shot very nicely and very filmically. A lot of great using of the thirds and the framing.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is something I could better illustrate like with a video commentary showing things, but like the shot composition, it could have been a rom-com, but like that used these shot compositions, but like it just was like it hit what I liked, what I would do, you know, as a cinematographer if I were one, like the look I would chase. Like I just fucking love the composition. I loved it was very kind of painting piece. Like everything was composed as if it's a painting. Very well balanced. Again, the use of thirds was wonderful, beautiful. I guess before going on anything else, just any other film look, cinematography, composition things you want to add?
Well, and that was one of the things that I noticed in watching this movie, again, from the very beginning, and as I was watching this movie thinking that it was written by Ernest Hemingway, and then was confused whenever it was from a German soldier's perspective, and then I was even more impressed with Ernest Hemingway, because I was like, damn, he like went through this, and he wrote from the German perspective. I was like, damn, Ernest Hemingway, you're going after it. And then I found out like about midway, or like towards the end, I was like, oh no. This isn't Ernest Hemingway thing at all.
Oh no!
And but I was blown away with that, and then even again with knowing that it's still of the time, like a timely piece, that it wasn't. It felt like it was written recently. Like, and I know that sounds silly, but it wasn't treated with like the like gravitas of an age-old like a masterwork, like a masterpiece that we have to treat, and we have to make everything like sit, and like it didn't have that, like, you know, a lot of times it feels like they treat these masterworks as if they're like they got to treat them with kid gloves, like taking them out of museum and they've got the cotton gloves on them and stuff like that. And it's like, nah, this was fucking with the synth stuff, like the droning synth stuff in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was so good. The music was so good. And then the shots, like
it was like a Lord of War opening, but haunting.
That opening
dread.
Like that opening sequence with how Paul gets his uniform and stuff, and then like how it's so easily, like everything in this.
It's so good. It also shows the desperation of the war too. Like you see how desperate they are that they're using these things, and like at least I extrapolated that. And then you cut to the boys like eagerly going to war, and just how ignorant they are on top of like
so
the
excited.
Obviously the violence and death and all that shit, they don't know that's going to happen. But on top of that, the fact that it's all like hopeless, but they have no idea how bad it is really interesting, really cool. There's so many cool aspects at play, that you can extrapolate from this. Like I did that as someone who knows just a little bit of World War I history, but if you didn't, you would just know violence and war, and then youthful like kind of bliss, like going into war and loss of innocence.
Well, and this movie I feel like did such a good job of sort of illustrating things and placing things in a position where, because again, I know a little bit about World War One, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's all these different sort of like technologies coming together at once that made it horrible, that made it this like awful experience, and all these sort of technologies converging, a lack of sort of like a big war, and then the largesse of this war as it sort of connects across many different countries, and it's just like massive amounts of people, but then still stuck. The tactics hadn't evolved, but the technology had evolved, and so it's like just like a recipe for bloodshed. And then like there's a scene relatively late in the movie, or maybe midway through the movie, where you see tanks for the first time, and you get the sense that, I mean, while they're 4 years into the war, tanks aren't like new, but it is kind of like that, like, all right, it is like a game mechanics wise, it's like, okay, we've done the hand to can, we've done our sort of like thing, we've figured out how this works, and then all of a sudden there's a metal box with 4 guns on it and cannons, and it's like, shit, there's nothing we can do. Except for like, it's just like absolutely brutal. And like I think that's the first time that I've seen that like illustrated how big of a difference having tanks made to warfare.
It changed everything until air and rocket propelled shit came on, in the post World War II. Tanks were the game changer.
Yeah.
And it was, but also was so cool to see, I don't know, maybe cool, I don't know, whatever. The kind of like reaction of like, what the fuck are these things? And then like kind of the shooting at it and the hopelessness and like trying to figure out what the hell's going on. But also on the flip side, them, kind of figuring some things out on the fly, like maybe shoving a grenade down the muzzle or some of one of the cannons, whatever. Like there's a lot of interesting things there.
Yeah.
And the terror of them going over the trenches, like literally just kind of shitting on the fact that they exist. I don't know. Like the showing of tanks was huge. And I do know a little bit on the history of like the tanks and how they were used. And they were originally created and they were kind of scattered across the front lines, and they had some effect. Like they would I think the first time they rolled out, there was like huge gains and like, holy shit. But then like the unreliability and like figuring out like focusing artillery or like other kind of anti-tank measures came in. They were still pretty good, but they weren't effective until they realized that they used them in mass. That's when the tanks really mattered, and that's when the big difference happened. And I'm guessing that's the point they're at, which makes it weird that they're so new to them. So I'm trying to figure out, like, this is kind of like a obviously fictional story, so it hits some things, but in terms of what I just outlined, it kind of meshes them together. The fact that they figured out mass attacks and it was a surprise. But also it's interesting that they show planes attacking, like this kind of literally like blitzkrieg, like combined arms assault, like being the difference from the French though. Whatever, it works. It's just very interesting. And it's all just cool representation of these historic events, obviously tragic and fucking brutal, but from like a kind of historical bullet point, it's interesting to see these things visually represented after kind of having read about it for so long. So
yeah, and it's probably like a little mishmash where they're bending the rules of reality or whatever to kind of showcase like I think that this is like the best encapsulation as a person who was born in 1991 and has literally no idea what it was like in World War One. But it's like, I think that from what I have read, and this is something that I've said for a long time, is that because of the atrocities that happened in World War II, people sort of like, I'm gonna say this, and it sounds bad and weird, but they've slept on World War One as far as like an awfulness thing.
Yeah.
Where
it's almost like maybe treated that World War II as an extension of World War One. So it's remembering the most recent part, I guess.
Yeah.
But
and it's interesting too if you sort of reflect, like we get to the end of the movie where Daniel Bruhl, who has got to be tired of playing, he's got to be tired of playing German like soldiers, whichever way you want to shake it.
Yeah.
He's got to be tired of it. But he with that treaty that they're signing, and like it's like, well, this is gonna we're setting up World War II right now. We're setting up the sequel. you know, by these terms that you're setting out here, we're setting up the sequel. We don't like this.
Yeah, it's funny how the French are always betrayed in this.
Yeah,
this situation, from what I understand and read, it's pretty spot on. That it's just like they're being petty ass bitches from like, and it's all petty ass bitch stuff. Like,
well, that's what World War I was
with the families and like the cousins and shit, and then the payback due to the fact that they like, because I think there was the Franco-Prussian War.
Yeah,
the French won. No, the Germans won, and then World War I, Franco-Prussian War, the Germans won. I'm pretty sure. And in World War I, the French won, and then so World War II was kind of like the tiebreaker.
Rubber match.
Yeah, and Germany, beat France, but lost in the end. Anyways, it's just like, but it's
won
like
the fight, but lost.
It's like a fucking like sports rivalry between these two countries, and then like the family rivalry. It's just like stupid, but all that stuff illustrates the insanity of the destruction and the death over Europe over a course of 35-ish years or whatever it is,
Yeah.
It's insane. And like, and to your point, like the destructiveness and brutality of this, I feel like is overshadowed because it was so much the same for so many years, just the same trench warfare. Like, I wonder if it's almost like boring in the sense that it's like once the trenches started, it was the same thing for 4 years. Just, it was like same shit, different day, more or less.
Well, that's what they said at the end too, and like that's the thing where it's like eventually they just sat and they would like take 100 meters, lose 100 meters, take 100 meters, lose 100 meters, trade the trenches essentially. And it's
such
just like
a waste of life.
Just the absolute waste of life, for just such so ridiculous little fucking stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like again, kind of like talking about like the way things looked, but they did so many little beautiful things to really like hit those points, like the
in terms
general,
of the filmmaking.
Say again.
In terms of the filmmaking.
In terms of the filmmaking.
Yeah.
To really
it was so vague. It's like World War I. There's so many beautiful things that really illustrated.
No, like the general filling up his wine and then tossing out the excess, tossing his little chicken to his dogs while these soldiers out, and he's like, we gotta fight. He's up there living in his big like castle, eating his Cornish game hen, drinking his 3 different drinks, so that he can have his 3 different like drinks, and then the guy on the train eating his croissants, like the excess that they're going because they're so disconnected from the war that is there. And then you cut it with these guys who are eating turnip bread. And I think one of my favorite was whenever they like stumbled into the French trench, and they were like, "Oh, there's just a shit ton of bread here, and bread and sausages," and they just like feasted. Yeah. And I was like, I fucking get that, boys.
Yeah, I like the true human moments, like in a battle. They're like, fuck this, I'm going to eat for right now. I think the movie has so much showing and so much telling, which is, it sounds dumb. What else is a movie going to say? But like, this movie has so much to say, or so much to communicate, so much it wants to do.
But it does it visually.
But it does it visually and with dialogue, and almost in excess, but it's never overbearing. It's never preachy. it's like it reaches the magnitude of this event, of the absurdity of this event, and it's so good. It almost elevates the point it's trying to make by being like, yeah, we're yelling at the top of our lungs and it still isn't loud enough or something. I don't know. It's so good. It never got exhausting. Not even close.
Because it keeps hitting them in new different ways, and it does it like, I think that's one of the things that this movie does so well. And I was just laughing because I was thinking about like the sentence that we just said together, where it's like, yeah, this movie tells a story visually and with dialogue, and it's like, well,
yeah, it's like sick.
Boys,
this is the commentary we come here for.
That's how movies work. But this movie, like, so it's like, sometimes you see something and it's so presentational with how it's presenting its show, not tell,
Yeah.
And like the first, almost until the boys show up, there's no dialogue. There's very limited dialogue. There's no like dialogue that's like, hey, we're here to pay attention to this dialogue. As you're following Henrik's story in the very first 15 minutes or whatever it is, it's like there's no dialogue. You don't need dialogue because you see everything that you need to be told. You don't need to get told. You don't need a opening screen that's like, yo, this has been happening for this long. They're about to make this charge. And it's like, you know what? Because that information doesn't matter. Everything that is on screen is a choice. It's like the information about why, that doesn't matter. Because all that matters is Heinrich is going over the edge here, and he's watching his buddies get blown up, and he's going to get blown up. And then we're going to reuse his uniform for Paul.
Well, yeah, and I think to that point, or just like the fact that the opening has no dialogue is super heavy-handed, like visual shit, and then we go to the fucking speech from the douche, couch general, like speaking gloriously. It's like, again, it just opens up visual fucking blast of information and saying something to then literal blast of a man saying something and being super heavy-handed with it, and so like just watch the first however long it takes for you to get to through those two sequences, and like you'll probably get exactly what we're saying. Like
it's like 20 it's like the first 20 minutes, like it really is like it, and that's what sold me on it. I was like, oh shit, hell yeah, this is fucking dope.
Yeah,
that and the music, so good.
Yeah, and it's good. It's sold on it because it's a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not a fun movie either. So it's like, it's a good thing that it is good, engaging, because again, so most people have a gist on what All Quiet on the Western Front is, but it's always this one guy and his friends. They go to war, young and green and excited. And one by one, they die off. They see the horrors of war. They live through it. They become jaded. They become grizzled. They become defeated, And then always at the end, Paul dies at like the 11th hour. Literally, I guess that kind of works out.
Is that where the phrase comes in? Is that or the phrase come before that?
I wonder if that's where the phrase comes, or it means like it's almost midnight, kind of thing.
Because it's like, it makes sense, like the 11th hour, where it's
it
like
makes
the last
a lot of
possible
sense
second.
with this. Yeah.
Well, yeah, with this, it makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, so that's always All Quiet on the Western Front. It's always the same story, but that's kind of my dumbed down synopsis of it. It's a loss of innocence. It's probably not one of the original. It's not. It could be the original I don't know, but it's like one of the earliest prominent anti-war films,
probably
anti-war stories, out there.
Between that and Red Badge of Courage,
Yeah, and it does. It does it so well. Like it just doesn't. There is the politics storyline, which is maybe what I could take it or leave it.
I think they did a good job in not having it bog it down.
Yeah, but there are no politics between the soldiers on the ground. They're kind of just there, and it's like a rivalry thing. Like, let's go to Paris. Yeah, fuck the French. Like, it's super simple, but there's no rhetoric of hating them. Like, they barely talk about the French in the trenches, or the few times we see the Germans, we're barely like, there's no like disposition given on them. Like, it's just kind of they're there, and it's about the fact that they're there and they're doing this thing. They're fighting war, and that really allows the moments of anti-war and kind of the shittiness of it itself to be shown and communicated really well. And it's a movie that's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, but it doesn't, besides the train diplomacy shit, it doesn't like have a lot of like extra baggage with how much it says, I guess, which I guess is more echoing what I said earlier. But I don't know. The point is, this movie's really good. Like, there's no wasted
really
moments.
Good.
Yeah,
I would say too, maybe in even as a sort of a departure from how I usually am on this podcast, where it's like, and in life, where it's like, hey, let's have less time. Let's do less. Let's get it tighter. I actually think that this movie is served by. I think it's served by everything that's there. I like the diplomacy stuff. I think that it serves to undercut and to provide sort of a palate cleanser from the brutality of it, which makes then the brutality of the trenches hit harder.
You're right.
Which is like why I would be like, no, I think that it needs to be there, because we get to like have cuts from, them eating turnip bread to that guy stuffing his face with croissants, and then we get to see, Paul in his little pond with his poor French friend.
That's probably the most iconic All Quiet scene.
That's freaking brutal.
Like that's in every single one, but they obviously with modern movie making just made it even more brutal for today's version. Have you seen the World War? It's a Kirk Douglas film.
No, probably not. It's
really good. It hits the same Passive Glory. It's a Stanley Kubrick and starring Kirk Douglas.
Oh, okay.
If you like this, I would recommend that because it also has the same contrast of like fuckhead generals and like soldiers on the ground and the shit they deal with. It's super simple premise. It's like the same kind of setting as this, like vaguely. Not vaguely. It's World War I, but it's not based on something serious. It's just like a drama set in this universe that hits on real world or real life things that like motifs and themings that happen then. And I don't know. It's really solid. I'd recommend it.
I think this movie did a really good job. This movie and this story, it does a really good job of hitting everything in a weird way without feeling like it's shoving it in your face. Like even the whole like the eternity of war as like the kid is the like final piece that shoots Cat, and it's like shit, this shit just keeps going, huh? This brutality just keeps on going.
Well, it's like, oh, here's a respite. Nope, just kidding.
Nope.
Oh, here's a respite. Nope, Paul has to go on this final charge. And it's like
Paul wants to. Paul at that point, Paul's like, fuck it, I don't even give a shit anymore. I'm done.
He's like, here we go again. It's like that GTA meme. At that point,
shit. But so,
or the brutality, like again, like I forgot his name. It's kind of a weird German name, like not something I've heard often. But the guy that stabs himself in the neck with the fork, like, oh, he's finally got his way out. Nope. Yeah. He doesn't think he's worth anything besides being a soldier, and now he can't be a soldier because he's lost his foot or whatever. Yeah. So now he's gonna kill himself with a fork, like, the complexity of that situation.
And then like the guy just taking the soup.
Yeah, the guy taking the soup while they're trying to deal with his body. But like the complexity of that situation of like the guilt or like the fact that they brought him food with the fork and that aided in his death, but also how fucking much around death they have been. So it's like how desensitized, but they aren't, like it's still fucking emotionally impactful and traumatic. Like it's just so much. There's so many layers in there that it's just like it would take something like World War I to.
But they don't.
Like,
but
to
they
deliver
don't
that.
say anything about it. They don't
exactly.
They don't
that's
say
all
they,
stuff
like,
I picked up. Like that's all my interpretation of it. And it's like
yeah. Well, because that's what they're saying, but they're also it's not like Paul goes to Kat and be like, we brought him the fork. And like they're not having a big thing. It's just like
and then Kat stops him. He's like, no. You
can't think like
wake
that.
up. Yeah, you can't go down that road. Just stupid shit like that.
You know,
no, it's just like they deal with
like-
it in
it's
a
like
weird way.
which makes it hit harder for us, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Oh yeah.
You know. Man, that fucking scene with in the foxhole with his French friend, like, and then like how you parallel that at the very end with Paul getting the bayonet through the heart and like having that eye contact with the French dude he's been fighting. And it's like neither of these dudes, and it's like he's looking at him, and the French dude's like, there's like the call, it's like, hey, it's 11 o'clock, war's over, guys.
Yep.
And he's looking at the German, like, they're looking at each other, and the French dude's like, you fucking idiot. Why'd you make us do this?
Yeah.
You know? Because we have no other choice but to do this. But to do you.
Yeah.
And you didn't give us a choice.
I mean, it's self-defense, obviously, at that point. So it's like, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, at that point, a mass surrender would have meant nothing for the French, and maybe that would have saved. I don't know. It's just dumb. That's the point. Is it's dumb.
Yeah.
It's just sad. But
It's a good bad vibe. It is.
yeah, the not cool thing. The representation, the visualization of World War I action war on screen, I think is the best I've seen. Like it just, I don't know. There's always a World War I film, and there's something about it. Like it's too punched in, and it's trying to show that there's more men charging than there are, or at the field is green and beautiful for some reason. 1917. You know, like shit like that. They're like they have the scale in 1917, but it's obviously they saved on the production design by making it just a green field with a single trench. You know, whatever. But this movie like spares no expense, and also, or just I don't know. There's like the scale is there, the brutality is there. You could
see Mordor.
The true tactics of like, or if you want to put air quotes, tactics of World War combat is there. You know, seeing the tanks en masse charging, the super wide of that, incredible. Like, you know, these are things that there's only black and white footage of, and you know, and some video game but like to see like a live action version of this it helps that kind of visual aid of like, yeah, this, I don't know, it just sells the shittiness of it. And then also like historically military history, it's like fascinating. It's interesting to see how it could have looked, I guess. Not that I want to see war or battle, but it's like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. People always think it's a war, but I'm not alone with it being a military history interested person. So I just don't know how to explain it.
I understand.
But it's interesting.
I understand a little bit. You know, it's just a fascinating, like, where we came from almost, or like I think it's not the same, but it's like almost how people are like fascinated with like serial killers too. Yeah. But where it's just like, and again, it's just like it's so weird. And I think, I mean, the military history makes a little bit more sense than that, like in terms of like, because it's about organization and logistics and weird and like stuff like that's so disassociated from like the horrors of it. So then when you see both things in the same place, it's fascinating. Like the logistics and like the technology. Like the technology of warfare, really, if you look, like that's one of the key things that makes humans humans.
Violence,
and, like, and tools, and like the use of tools for violence
and passion.
and passion,
and how that plays out.
and then also like the general speech in the beginning where it's like the manipulation of the masses to, like, I was thinking about that while watching it, that there's like a guy that's his job, where it's like his job is to be like, hey, you're fucking great. Like his job is not to see the front lines, but it's to make sure that the recruits are appropriately like juiced up to go die.
Yeah.
And that's his job. He doesn't see the front lines, but he's like, you're doing it for the fatherland. You're the freaking greatest, and you're gonna take Paris, and we're gonna run the world, and we're gonna dance on the bones of our enemies, and you're gonna love it, and you're gonna make 16 kids, and the 16 kids are all gonna have 16 kids of their own, and you're gonna have your own personal army. We love you.
Yeah, there's like I think the in that sense, like there's like combat infantry is, I think, still, I don't know, I don't think it's the majority of the force of an army. So it's, and obviously like logistics and all that stuff wouldn't be interesting on the screen, but then showing the jobs that other people have that contrast what the people are doing, like the combat people are doing, is really interesting, and like obviously just a huge part of what this movie does. It's an aesthesis, you know, that contrast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
How do you think this movie stacks up against 1917?
I like it better as a World War I film, pretty without a doubt. But I like 1917 as a fresh film experience, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I'll allow it.
Like I think that 1917 does a lot of cool things and hits a lot of interesting story beats, especially over like the course of like vaguely 3 hours.
Yeah.
But kind of 12 hours in a one shot. And but I also think it hit on tropes that like again, like the civilian in the basement, like the horrors of war on the home front kind of thing. Like I don't like, there's plenty of places to tell that story and settings, and I don't like, it just was a weird one. Obviously it was for a different setting and the journey of the one shot, but like I don't know, I don't know if that like was good mileage to taking advantage of the World War I setting, I guess, you know. And obviously it couldn't have been a oneer in the trenches. That's why they made this this mission. I guess in the comparison, like both being fictional stories, 1917 kind of feels kind of not fantasy, but it feels more
theater.
It's more theater, more contrived for the experience of the storytelling gimmick, where this is saying something is fictional but tries to really sink in the feeling of the time period and the historical event.
Yeah.
And so it feels more like a true World War I film, where 1917 is a war film that's a one shot, and they made it in World War I. And I know Sam Mendes, his like great grandfather had ties, so I know it's like an honest movie. You know, I'm not like it was special.
John's over here shitting on it. He said, "Hey, fuck you, Sam Mendes."
No, like I know it was.
Go do Skyfall again, you idiot.
It's an honest movie, so I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying it's different. And
why don't you do a drama piece with Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah,
you
do it,
idiot.
So wait, how about you then? How to bounce off of that, or what are your thoughts?
I kind of think that I liked this movie. I think that I like the film experience of 1917, and it was interesting because I feel like we hit similar moments, like with the foxhole, and then I feel like there was a similar thing with that, like sort of one-on-one struggle of in 1917 at some point. But I feel like they both bring similar feelings but different like this is a more sort of immersive experience where you feel like the dread and you feel sinking in. You feel
more
like you're
immersive
sinking
though
into
than a oneer, which I feel like is one of the hooks of a oneer. You know.
Well, no, because there's more movement with 1917.
True.
And I feel like we stay with it, but I feel like this, I grow and I live with these characters because I see the bigness, because that's one of the things with the drawback of the oneer, where it's like we're immersed into George McKay's character. You know, I would say we're immersed into his experience, but that doesn't necessarily give us the whole picture. And like I am immersed in the world of November 1918 with everything that is built. So by the time we get to November 1918,
1917?
I feel it. No. In 1918. In this movie.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I am immersed in that month. Like in those first 10 days, I am in it. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like I feel completely connected to the story and what's happening, and like I feel like I feel it bigger and better. And it's interesting because sort of talking about another movie that we watched relatively recently, A Bridge Too Far, where it has, again, that's a World War II movie and this is a World War I movie, but like this, I feel like this is how I want A Bridge Too Far, because A Bridge Too Far was very historical, accurate, good, but this movie had, again, part of it is just this movie's made for a modern audience. So that's that's what I'm asking for, I guess, which isn't fair to ask of a movie that was made 45 years ago. But like I was watching this and I was like, this is what I want from Bridge Too Far, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, and I think that's an interesting thing. It's something that's hard for us to answer. Was A Bridge Too Far contemporary for its audience then? You know, like, and I would maybe argue it wasn't even then too. So it's like it's just one of those weird kind of fuddy video for stuffy historian dudes, you know, like myself or whatever.
Because it's like it is like it's interesting too, because how long this movie sits in shots. It sits in long shots. We get a lot of sort of like big, sort of like extraneous, beautiful, esoteric shots of trees and like beautiful shots of the countryside. And there's a coyotes in the very beginning suckling at the teat, you know, or coyotes or wolves or whichever it is at the very beginning of the movie. That's sort of like an esoteric art film, you know, and then like to sort of like illustrate the point and give us the feeling of where it is, which led to me being like, hell yeah, I'm in this. Whereas a lot of the stuff in A Bridge Too Far was presented as like, here is the way that things are, and like again, like just like historical footage, like as cool as it was to see all those jellyfish jump, like falling out of the sky, or to see all the ropes becoming unstuck as they did the pulling of the planes, it was like that was an illustration of a historical thing, not a way to get me invested in this story.
Yeah, I agree. I think I just lost my train of thought. What the hell?
Sorry, bud. I thought I was going to sneeze. I thought I was going to sneeze there too. So I like.
We just had a weird pause. Yeah.
I thought I was going to sneeze. You were like contemplating.
I had like a moment. I had a moment of, I didn't log Black Panther in my my letterbox. So then I went to do it, and then I wanted to add on to what you said, so I knew I agreed. And I was like, wait, what did I want to say?
Wait, what was he saying?
Yeah. But I tied back to 1917. I don't remember. But it's a good film. I was not ready for it. It was truly, that's why I was working on the side when I put it on. I thought, I was like, I've seen this movie 2 times now. Let's put it on. I'll kind of knock some things out. But I was like, holy shit, this is good. Like, very good. And so like that actually probably adds on to the positivity of it, is like, you know, low expectations, you know, delivers high. And so I don't know. This is like, I'm versed in war movies for what it's worth, and this is up there for me. Like it just it makes sense. You know, it's one of the all-time great all-time prolific. I don't know what the right word is. Anti-war film and anti-war story, and it's it's definitely given its due. Like it wasn't made because it's something that it exists and would be something that would be successful. It was made because they knew they could do it well, and they could do it with honesty and an element of love. I guess it's hard to attribute positive words to a movie like this in that way, but like it was made with love. It was crafted, and
it was made with understanding. I feel like is maybe the best way to say it, because it's like I don't love this story, and the people who it's like I don't. I mean, again, love is a different. I mean, they probably do. It's like I love this story. This is a great story, but it's also like it's just made with understanding. Like, and that's one of the things that I would say, like with the visual storytelling being crafted the way that it is, it's like they understood what they were making, and they understood what was important in any given shot or why any shot was there.
Yep. Very, very purposeful.
Yeah. It was good. I liked it.
We should watch War Horse and see how that Steven Spielberg World War. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen that movie.
I don't have to watch it anytime soon, but it's a.
No, we'll just for the rest of the year we'll just do World War I stuff.
Yeah, become a World War I movie channel.
It's Stinky Popcorn Boys, just World War I.
Yep, that's the tagline. What have you? Oh, what do you give it? I guess before we move on to what we've been watching.
I'm gonna give this movie. I'm gonna give it 4 slices of summer sausage in the French trench.
Nice.
Yeah.
I give it 4 bowls of goose soup.
Ooh.
Goose stew, maybe is what
Goose
it's called.
stew.
But 4 to 5 as well.
You know what I loved that they just were like, because can you imagine? You stir up some eggs, you put them in your pocket, and then you pour them out into a little like joint cup thing. And you just stir it up, and then you're like, oh, this is the best stuff. And it's just regular egg. It's just egg. And I was like, damn, to them, that probably is great. Because that has, like, flavor, and it's protein, and it's, like, weird and creamy, and it's a different texture than turnip bread or whatever the fuck. Yeah. And it's like, shit.
But it's like if I would just be eating that, picking lint and crunchy sand bits or something like pieces of.
It just made me think
fabric
about
or some shit
about how ungrateful I was about my station and place in life.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was like, oh shit, that's gross.
Yeah,
but I mean, hey, also I understand. But yeah,
just great execution, Yeah,
and
it's like a fairly minor thing, like. The point is like, yeah, fuck yeah, we got food. That's as simple. That's as simple as it is for them. But then and you could take it that simple, or you could, go off on that. It's fascinating. And just the layers on, there's just layers, and there's on each segment and storytelling thing, and they're there for, they're there for you to take or not. I don't know. It's a great movie. It's not for everyone, but I don't know. I think
of the war movies, and I think that you could probably, for those of you who maybe don't like war movies or whatever the thing is, or if you like put them all together, because that's a tough like thing to say.
Yeah. But I do think there's an element of watching this. I think, it's not going to make you feel good, but especially with just war's always going on. I don't know.
Well, and
even if you're just like average American who's never going to have an influence on a war happening, but it's just like I think there's something there to like remember why it's terrible. Like obviously everyone knows it's terrible, but I don't know. Especially, I think politicians need to watch this kind of shit.
Yeah.
But there's something there, and I think this is one of the ones that sticks out.
And I think too, also as an illustration of a time that is not like of a history of war that is not necessarily like understood, because Because the thing with like World War II movies is so easy to be like, hey yo, fuck the Nazis, and everyone's like, hell yeah, fuck the Nazis.
Yeah.
And it's like that's an easy bad guy, and it's easy to do that, and it's easy to kind of
same
play
with
that.
the Japanese. It's like they attacked us and they
fucking
didn't take prisoners and they tortured prisoners or something. Like
yeah.
like the vilification's still there today.
Super easy, but it's super easy, and it's like even it's just a super easy thing to do. And then I think that this movie, being from the German like foot soldier perspective, for the most part, and like sort of like I don't know, it was just so good because this was like the backstory of the guy who attacks that. Like if we're always following the heroes, if the protagonists are the people that we're following in the story, then like that French guy that he fights at the end, this is like the story of like this is the backstory of that guy, which is so interesting. Of the guy who attacks him at the end, like through the whole movie, they finally get it, and then there's one last attack by the Germans, you know, and then this is the backstory of the guy that he has to kill because, and that changes his life or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
it's just fascinating the perspective that the story takes, and everything that it illustrates.
Yeah, it's like slice of life. It's not neo-realistic, but it is true. Like Paul could almost be anyone. Like Paul is not super special. Like his experience is maybe atypical of someone who lived any number of years through this. You know.
Yeah.
So it's
it's
I don't know.
It's good. It's good. It's a good movie. What I was gonna say is like, hey, you guys know me. You know that like like I think this is a good movie. So if you fall more towards me, where you're like, hey, I don't necessarily like love watching all the war movies or whatever, but like this is just good. This is good.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's goodly made film. That's my bad English.
It is goodly made, I think.
Also, what cool thing about it is it shows it just shows different aspects of battle that we don't usually see. Like usually battle happens and then the resolution is like the downward slopes. Like that wraps up super fast. But in this, you know, there's a whole retreat sequence, and it's like when you think about it, it's like, why isn't there more retreating sequences or more like it makes sense why we don't see like a reckless advance. Like that's not fun to see, like a slaughter of the defeated. But like a shitty retreat and like the horror of that and like getting the supplies they can is so good. And like especially in a World War I film where they're trading trenches, you know, it's like they're trying to get what they can out of this trench because that's the trench they're going to go at the end of the movie and where Paul dies, you know. It's like that's not why we're seeing it, but that's like a fun little extra not fun, but that's like an extra little layer there. So it's like, I don't know. It's interesting to see the second part of the battle we never really see from the perspective of the defeated, you know, in that thing. So it's also just what is on my screen right now, but it's also something I guess I wanted to add because it is interesting.
Isn't that something that's so? I was gonna say like exactly what, but it's like I was watching this and I was like talking to my dad and I was like, "Yo, this is like so cool to see the tanks." And it's like, well, it's not cool as one of the tanks come down and crushes a person. It's like, well, it's not cool. Cool's not the like word that I would use. It's interesting, you know, where it's like to describe these things, you're like, wow, this is so fascinating, and it's like you're just using positive language to describe something that is inherently like horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, I don't know how to express. Like, there is action on screen, and it is batshit bonkers, like spectacle.
It's bad.
Yeah, but it's like
it's cool to see. It's awful though.
Yeah, I think people know what we're trying to say.
Yeah, I know.
We're being indirect, and I think that in itself, we're trying to be. I don't know. Whatever. You guys know what we're saying. We're not.
You guys get it. You guys understand.
We're not sadists, or is that the right word? Sadist.
Sadist. Sadist. Yeah, maybe.
Sadistic. We're not sadistic.
We're not sadistic.
Anyways, what have you been watching?
I've been watching
few weeks.
I've been watching. Oh shit, dog. I've been watching White Lotus. I've been watching Attack on Titan.
Oh shit! Are you into anime now?
I'm into anime a little bit now. I've heard good things about Attack on Titan, and I was like, let me check the sweet boy out.
I like Attack on Titan, but it has the worst pacing. Like, it has some of the anime kind of like where nothing happens for 4 episodes, but then sometimes it's fucking blazing. So it's like,
and
it's
also,
a tough one because it's like I love it when I really like it, and then other times I don't know where it's like, oh, okay, now it's being slow and boring. Cool. Well, fuck.
Well, and I think also what it does is it'll half of each next episode, like half of each episode is like sort of like a quarter of the previous episode.
Yeah. A lot of just reused footage and shit.
Reused footage or like recap, like essentially like sort of like pseudo recap stuff.
Yep.
It's interesting. Been watching baseball. Baseball's gone now, but I was watching it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey,
I was
it's
rooting
okay.
for the team that wasn't cheaters to win.
What have you been watching?
Rewatching Ted Lasso, just having fun with
Okay.
that. But rewatched Heat also. Movies are excellent. Rewatched The Hunt for Red October.
Okay.
Fun, solid kind of flick. I love anti-Soviet propaganda films. It's fun.
Yeah.
And then I saw Black Panther last night, and we'll talk about that.
We sure will. We sure will.
I also am watching Chainsaw Man, which is only on Crunchyroll.
Okay.
But when the whole show is out, you should get a trial and binge it if you can.
Okay.
Because like, I don't know, I actually am really liking it.
Okay.
It's the first time I've contemporarily watched anime, like as like kind of zeitgeist, like whatever
Like
everyone's
as
talking
it's
about right
happening?
now. Yeah, and I think it's really good. I was like just watching because my girlfriend wanted me to watch it. She was super into it, read the manga, but I'm in. It's cool. It hits a lot of fun things, and it's stupid and cool. It looks beautiful, and it moves because I think it's only so long, and so it moves in a good way, and yeah, watch it, do it.
I will.
Get the trial when it's all out, and then unsubscribe.
Oh,
from
and
Crunchyroll.
Avatar. I've been watching Avatar. That's stuff. That's the main stuff that I've been watching.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta catch up and finish season 1 so we can chat about it.
Yeah. Well, as we sort of wind down here, I just wanted to, appreciate those of you who've sort of like stuck with us, hung
Indeed.
out while we took a sweet little break here. We'll be back talking about movies. We love it. We'll be back. We are
Indeed.
back. Rah.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging out, as he said. I appreciate it. And yeah, I don't know if we can, as they say in the battlefields of France, c'est la vie.
Say la vie. Give me that turkey. I gotta pee.